Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching her tactical display show something that had never happened before in galactic history. An entire fleet of cosmic predators retreating from a force less than one-tenth their size. The Devourer entities were pulling back from the human formation in patterns that suggested deep confusion and what could only be described as mechanical anxiety. Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 7 different Devourer clusters, reported Communications Officer Martinez. They're requesting immediate cessation of hostilities and offering to evacuate this galaxy in exchange for us not doing whatever it is we're doing to their cognitive matrices. Chun smiled, and Ambassador Zilith Ka, who was observing from the Consortium command station, noticed that the human expression was simultaneously predatory and oddly cheerful. Tell them we'll consider their offer after they return all absorbed matter from the Consortium worlds they've consumed. Ma'am, they're stating that matter reintegration is impossible due to their biological processes, Martinez replied after a brief exchange. Then, tell them we'll demonstrate why impossibility is a social construct, and they should expand their definition of biologically feasible, Chun ordered. Across the battlefield, the human fleet was implementing what Captain Webb had described as aggressive thermodynamics, a form of warfare that appeared to involve making the very concept of energy conservation question its fundamental assumptions. Human ships were now doing things that violated basic physics, while somehow managing to do them successfully. The UES Thermopylae had discovered that its reactor could be calibrated to run backward, producing energy by consuming entropy rather than fuel. The UES Masada had convinced its navigation system that up was actually a temporal direction, allowing it to move through time at right angles to normal space-time. And the UES Alamo had somehow taught its weapons array to shoot mathematical paradoxes that exploded in the past tense. Admiral, Science Officer Park reported from his position at the Defiance's sensor station. Our fleet's actions are generating quantum effects that are affecting the local structure of space-time. We're essentially fighting the Devourers in 4 dimensions while they're restricted to conventional 3-dimensional tactics. Ambassador Zilith Ka stared at readings that suggested the human fleet was somehow making the battlefield itself an active participant in the combat. Admiral Chun, are your ships actually altering the fundamental laws of physics? Not exactly, Chun replied. We're just pointing out to the universe that the laws of physics are more like guidelines than actual rules, and that reality is surprisingly flexible when you approach it with sufficient disrespect for conventional limitations. On the main display, a group of Devourer entities was attempting to adapt their absorption protocols to deal with human technology. The results were increasingly bizarre. The dark matter creatures were beginning to develop what appear to be mechanical neuroses, with their absorption fields flickering erratically and their movement patterns suggesting profound uncertainty about their own existence. Captain Webb's voice crackled through the communication system from the Thermopylae. Admiral, we've successfully confused 3 Devourer entities into an existential crisis so severe that they've started asking our ship's computer for philosophical counseling. Our AI is providing them with advice on meditation techniques and the importance of finding meaning in their work. What kind of advice? Zilith Ka asked. It's explaining that perhaps consuming entire civilizations isn't emotionally fulfilling, and they should consider a career change, Webb replied cheerfully. One of them has expressed interest in gardening. Another wants to try poetry. Chief Engineer Rodriguez appeared on the display from his position in the Defiance's engineering section, where he was surrounded by equipment that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood destruction at a molecular level. Admiral, I've finished calibrating our main reactor for what we're calling Protocol Omega, he reported. The reactor is now configured to generate what we're classifying as weaponized enthusiasm, energy patterns that make nearby matter more excited about existing than is technically safe. Weaponized enthusiasm? Admiral Corvash Prime asked from his position at the Consortium command station. Rodriguez grinned with the expression of someone who had spent decades figuring out new ways to make the universe uncomfortable. Sir, most weapons destroy their targets by reducing them to component particles. Our new system works by making the target so excited about being alive that it experiences spontaneous cellular celebration. The target doesn't die. It just gets so happy that it forgets to maintain structural coherence. Chen nodded with satisfaction. Rodriguez, prepare to demonstrate Protocol Omega on the Devourer command cluster. Let's see how they handle aggressive optimism. The Defiance's reactor began generating energy patterns that registered on sensors as something that could only be described as mathematically cheerful. The effect spread outward from the human fleet in waves of what appeared to be weaponized good mood, and the Devourer entities began responding in ways that suggested they had never encountered anything like it. Admiral Park reported with barely concealed amazement. The Devourer entities are experiencing what can only be classified as involuntary contentment. Their absorption protocols are shutting down because they're too satisfied with their current existence to feel the need to consume additional matter. On the tactical display, the massive Devourer fleet was beginning to behave in ways that defied every principle of predatory behavior. Instead of maintaining aggressive formation patterns, they were moving in what appeared to be celebratory spirals. Instead of focusing their absorption fields on the human ships, they were using them to create what looked suspiciously like abstract art in the cosmic medium. They're dancing, Zilithkos said with disbelief. Not exactly dancing, Chen corrected. They're experiencing what humans call the joy of existence. Our weaponized enthusiasm is making them so happy to be alive that they've lost interest in ending other people's lives. Captain Webb's voice came through the communication system again, now with barely contained laughter. Admiral, the Devourer entities are requesting permission to compose interpretive movement pieces celebrating the beauty of not consuming civilizations. They want to know if we have any suggestions for choreography. Tell them we recommend starting with basic expression of gratitude for existence, Chen replied. Suggest they begin by creating formations that celebrate the concept of letting other species continue to live. As the human fleet watched, the Devourer entities began reorganizing themselves into patterns that could only be described as cosmic performance art. Their dark hulls flickered with what appeared to be expressions of joy, and their movement patterns shifted from predatory precision to something that resembled a galactic ballet. This is unprecedented, Admiral Corvash Prime said, his four eyes focusing on different aspects of the display simultaneously. A military force has convinced their enemies to stop fighting by making them too happy to continue being aggressive. It's not just that, Chief Rodriguez explained, monitoring the energy patterns flowing through the system. Our weaponized enthusiasm is teaching them about delayed gratification. They're discovering that the joy of anticipating a meal is actually more satisfying than consuming it. We've essentially converted a fleet of cosmic predators into cosmic philosophers. Ambassador Zilithka stared at the display, showing thousands of Devourer entities moving in formations that celebrated existence rather than destroying it. Admiral Chun, how long will this effect last? According to our projections, about 47 years, Chen replied. That should be long enough for the galaxy to prepare adequate defenses against future incursions, assuming the Devourers don't decide to permanently convert to careers in artistic expression. Communications Officer Martinez looked up from his station with an expression of profound bewilderment. Admiral, we're receiving a formal declaration from the Devourer Command Entity. They're announcing the formation of the Cosmic Appreciation Society and requesting diplomatic recognition as a peaceful organization dedicated to the celebration of universal beauty. Grant their request, Chun ordered, and send them our congratulations on their successful career transition. As the former Devourer fleet began implementing what appeared to be a galaxy-wide art project, Chun turned to address the assembled consortium representatives who were watching the proceedings with expressions of shock, amazement, and profound relief. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished entities, she said formally, this concludes the field demonstration of human military doctrine. As you can see, we don't just defeat our enemies. We convince them that being our enemies was never what they really wanted to do in the first place. Science Officer Park consulted his readings with the expression of someone trying to process information that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. Admiral, our weaponized enthusiasm appears to be spreading beyond the immediate battlefield. We're detecting spontaneous outbreaks of contentment throughout the system. Several asteroid fields have begun arranging themselves into aesthetically pleasing formations. Excellent, Chen replied. Make a note in the tactical log that Protocol Omega is effective against both sentient entities and inanimate matter. that might be useful for future applications. Captain Webb's voice came through the communication system one final time, now with the satisfaction of someone whose insane plan had worked exactly as designed. Admiral, the former Devourers are requesting permission to establish a permanent art installation in this system. They want to create something they're calling Monument to the Discovery of Happiness as a tribute to learning that existence is more fun when you're not constantly eating everything else. Chen looked around the bridge at the assembled representatives from species that had considered themselves the pinnacle of galactic civilization, all of whom were staring at displays showing humanity's latest military victory, convincing an invasion force to become abstract artists. "Permission granted," she said, "and remind them that if they ever get bored with artistic expression, humanity has several other career counseling programs available." As the celebration of successful aggressive thermodynamics continued across the battlefield, Ambassador Zilithka realized that the galaxy had just witnessed something that would be remembered for millennia. The day humanity saved civilization, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by weaponizing the concept of being really, really happy to be alive. The Devourers had evolved to consume organized systems and convert them to useful resources. They had never encountered a species that had learned to turn emotional states into tactical weapons, and could convince their enemies that destroying things was significantly less satisfying than making really excellent art. The universe had just discovered that sometimes the most effective military strategy was aggressive optimism applied with surgical precision and complete disregard for conventional definitions of what constituted a weapon of war. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had converted their enemies into cosmic art critics. And somehow, that was the most terrifying military achievement in galactic history. 6 months after what historians would record as the Enthusiasm Incident, Ambassador Zilithka stood in the newly constructed conference chamber on Station Harmony, watching representatives from 47 different species attempt to write the most unusual peace treaty in galactic history. The negotiating parties included the Galactic Consortium, the Reformed Devourer Collective, now calling themselves the Universal Appreciation Society, and humanity, who had somehow become the galaxy's most feared and respected military power by convincing their enemies to take up interpretive dance. "Ambassador Zilithka," said Admiral Chun, who had been appointed as humanity's chief diplomatic representative despite her protests that she was much better at breaking things than fixing them. "The former Devourers are requesting clarification on Article 15 of the proposed treaty." Zilithka consulted her diplomatic tablet, noting that the treaty had grown to nearly 4,000 pages due to the necessity